Sedona, Arizona, Wednesday, June 4, 2026. Body camera footage from a US Marshals fugitive task force officer, mounted on a dashboard across the lot, tracked him on each approach canvas bag over one shoulder, keys in hand, the same gravel path, the same unhurried stride. Over 312 logged entries since October 2024. The undercover surveillance vehicle moved positions twice. He never looked up. He reached for the door handle at 6:14 a.m. 4 US Marshals closed the distance in under 8 seconds. The subject was face down on the gravel at 6:14:40. No shots fired, no resistance. The retreat's wind chimes moved in the morning air. The door he never opened would stay locked for the next several hours while evidence technicians worked the casita 40 minutes away. US Marshals Fugitive Task Force records showed the name on the business license did not match any known identity. The Marshals had flagged the discrepancy 4 months earlier. The surveillance file had been open since then. What they had not known, 22 months earlier, was where he had gone. The case file opens in September 2024. A mid-level synthesis chemist with confirmed ties to a Sinaloa-affiliated methamphetamine production network had been in federal custody in Tucson, held in a safe house under a cooperation agreement. His debriefings had produced actionable intelligence on 3 lab operators. He had agreed to testify. His testimony had a scheduled date. 11 days before that date, he was gone. No forced entry, no sign of coercion, no contact from the network that investigators could immediately identify. He had simply left. Taken cash from a location only he knew about, used a travel window that the protection arrangement allowed, and did not return. The cooperation agreement dissolved the moment he failed to appear. His federal file was reclassified. Within 72 hours, his photograph and fingerprint data were mounted in the Phoenix field office of the U.S. Marshals Service. A reward of $180,000 was authorized. The Fugitive Task Force began working leads. Those leads went cold within 6 weeks. The subject had done something operationally unusual for someone with his background. He had not run to Mexico. He had not contacted any known associate. He had not used any financial channel tied to his previous identity. He had taken $34,000 in cash, acquired a forged Belize passport through a channel that took investigators 14 months to trace, driven 4 days, and stopped less than 300 miles from where he started. Surveillance footage from an unmarked police sedan parked on a side street captured the foot traffic, tourists, day visitors, the occasional delivery. A place where a new face drew no second look, where cash transactions left no trail worth following. He had identified a commercial property, a small building previously used as an art studio, signed a lease under the invented name on the Belize document, and within 60 days opened a boutique yoga and breathwork retreat. He taught 3 classes a day. He priced the sessions toward the upper end of the local market. He accepted only card payments through a registered merchant account, filed local business taxes, carried liability insurance, and accumulated over 90 positive reviews on tourism platforms. Drone surveillance footage showed a man locking up, stacking chairs visible through the window, then driving away in the same vehicle logged in every prior entry. The radar tracking display at the mobile command unit marked his route. Nothing flagged. That was the problem. The Marshals Task Force in Phoenix did not know any of this. For 22 months, the file remained open but largely inactive, one of hundreds of active fugitive cases competing for investigative bandwidth. If you've ever assumed a federal fugitive hunt means constant pressure and relentless pursuit, this case says otherwise. Most fugitives are not found in weeks, many go years, some are never found. The $180,000 reward generated tips, but none were actionable. Facial recognition queries against known databases returned no matches. The forged Belize passport had not been used at any crossing point the system monitored. The crack came from an unexpected direction. In January 2026, the U.S. Marshals Service Cold Case Review Unit in Phoenix conducted a quarterly audit of long-term open files. Cases dormant for 18 months or longer were flagged for a specific protocol, supplemental database cross-referencing using updated facial recognition tools. The technology available in January 2026 was meaningfully different from what existed in September 2024. Processing speed, match confidence thresholds, and the breadth of source imagery had all improved. The subject's biometric profile was submitted to a commercial facial recognition vendor under a federal law enforcement data sharing agreement. The query ran against a backlog of ATM camera images from financial institutions across Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Images collected as part of an unrelated financial fraud investigation and subsequently retained in a shared law enforcement database. One frame came back at 91%. A gas station ATM in Sedona, Arizona.
The timestamp, November 14th, 2025.
The subject, or someone who matched his biometric profile at 91% confidence, had used the machine at 4:32 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. He had withdrawn $200. He had not looked directly at the camera. The match came from a partial three-quarter face angle. 91% is not an arrest. It is not even a warrant. It is a probability. The Marshals Cold Case Unit submitted the finding to the Phoenix Field Office with a recommendation for preliminary verification. A single investigator was assigned. No task force deployment. No surveillance team. One agent with a travel authorization and a case file. That agent drove to Sedona in the third week of January 2026. I went through the case documentation later, and one detail in the preliminary verification report kept pulling at me. The agent did not go to the gas station first. He went to the county business registry. His reasoning, if the subject had withdrawn cash from an ATM in Sedona in November 2025 and was not a tourist, he had a reason to be there. A reason that was not a hotel booking, because hotel bookings leave reservation records. The agent searched the registry for businesses registered in the 12 months before the ATM hit, under names that did not match any known associate of the subject. Hidden camera surveillance footage from inside a field office showed an agent at a terminal running the filter sequence. Service businesses, post-October 2024 registrations, sole proprietorships with a named face attached. 11 results. The agent pulled each business profile and cross-referenced it against public tourism platforms. The cursor stopped on one listing. One entry listed a proprietor photograph on its website. The agent ran the photograph through the same facial recognition system. 93%. 2 days later, the Phoenix Field Office authorized a full surveillance operation. What strikes me about this case is the gap between the initial ATM hit and the arrest. 4 months of careful, methodical surveillance, not a rushed takedown. The Marshals understood that a single biometric match, even at 93%, was not enough. The integrity of the subsequent prosecution depended on what happened next. The surveillance operation ran from February 4, 2026 through June 3, 2026. 4 months. The team mapped his daily route with precision. He woke between 5 and 5:30 a.m. He walked from the casita to the retreat building along a fixed path, arriving between 6:10 and 6:18 a.m. He taught 3 classes, ending around noon. He ran errands in the early afternoon, always the same cluster of businesses. He returned to the casita by 4 p.m. He did not vary this pattern except on Sundays, when the retreat was closed. The surveillance team had to operate in a tourist environment, which created specific constraints. A vehicle parked in the same position every morning becomes visible to a local. The team rotated vehicles, rotated personnel, used commercial rental cars to blend with tourist traffic. Drone surveillance was authorized for 11 days of the operation to map the casita's surroundings without ground team exposure. The obstacle they did not anticipate came in week 6. A repeat customer who lived locally and attended classes 3 times a week began paying unusual attention to a vehicle parked near the trailhead adjacent to the retreat's access path. She noted it in an online community forum, a local neighborhood platform, describing an unfamiliar car parked in the same spot on multiple mornings. She did not identify it as law enforcement. She described it as suspicious. The surveillance team learned about the post within hours through routine monitoring of local platforms. The vehicle was immediately withdrawn and reassigned to a different operational position. A second vehicle replaced it, different color, different rental company. The gap in coverage lasted 4 hours. The subject gave no indication that he had noticed anything. His routine did not change. There is a line in the operational review summary that reads almost like fiction. It notes that during the 4-month surveillance period, the subject received a total of 11 5-star reviews on the retreat's public listing. He taught classes to federal agents' families, not intentionally, not as a cover. A spouse of one of the surveillance team members, visiting Sedona for an unrelated reason, booked a session at the retreat based on its online rating. She did not know about the operation. Her husband did not know she had booked there until she mentioned it over dinner. Undercover surveillance footage, recorded from a van parked at the edge of the lot, showed the class running its full length. The subject taught. Participants filed out. Nothing moved on the thermal imaging feed mounted in the tree line. The operational question as June approached was timing and method. The subject had not contacted any known Sinaloa-affiliated individual during the surveillance period. He had not used encrypted communications that the team could identify. His phone, a device purchased locally in late 2024, showed no contact with any known network associate. But the laptop in the casita was a different matter. The team could not access the laptop without a physical search. A search required either a warrant-authorized entry or an arrest. The warrant request was filed in late May 2026, supported by the 4 months of biometric confirmation, the surveillance record, and a financial analysis showing that the subject's cash withdrawals and business revenue did not account for the full amount of cash he had carried into Arizona in September 2024. The discrepancy, approximately $180,000, unaccounted for. The inference, he had concealed cash in or near the casita. The warrant was approved on May 29, 2026. The arrest window was set for the week of June 2. At the command vehicle, the team marked Wednesday, June 4 on the operational board. Body camera footage from the pre-mission briefing showed agents reviewing the schedule. Tuesdays and Thursdays brought 14 or more participants before 6:30 a.m. Too many bystanders for a clean takedown. Wednesdays ran lighter. Between 6:10 and 6:18, thermal imaging confirmed the subject unlocked the building and moved through it alone. That was the window. 4 marshals. No SWAT, no breaching equipment. The target was a man in linen pants with a canvas bag, 6:14 a.m. He reached for the door handle. The team closed from 4 positions simultaneously, 2 from the trailhead approach, 2 from the parking area. The subject registered their presence at approximately 6 seconds of approach. He did not run. He did not reach for anything. He turned, looked at the badges, and lowered himself to the ground without instruction. 40 seconds from first movement to cuffs. The evidence recovery at the casita took 6 hours. What the search team found: $214,000 in cash, distributed across 4 locations inside the structure, including a sealed container beneath a raised floor panel in the bathroom. A laptop with encrypted partitions, a burner phone with 34 saved numbers, none registered to verified identities, a second passport, a different country than the Belize document, with a different name. The laptop's encrypted partitions were the item of greatest investigative interest. Forensic examination, which took 11 days, revealed communications with a still operating segment of the Sinaloa affiliated network the subject had originally agreed to testify against. The communications were not recent, the most recent dated from March 2026, 3 months before the arrest. They indicated that the subject had at some point during his time in Sedona made contact with a network intermediary. What he communicated and what he received in return was not immediately clear from the encrypted record. The 34 numbers on the burner phone represented a separate investigative thread. At the time of the subject's arrest, none had been fully identified. 7 had been connected to known or suspected network associates within the first 30 days of post-arrest investigation. The remaining 27 were still being worked. Here is the take that will get us some pushback. The cooperation agreement that dissolved when this subject fled should have included monitoring provisions that would have detected his departure earlier. 11 days before scheduled testimony, a cooperating witness with documented ties to an active cartel network was in a protection arrangement that allowed him a travel window. That window was the mechanism of the escape. The system that created the arrangement also created the gap. That is not a failure of any individual agent. It is a structural design question that this case puts on the table plainly. What do you think? Should cooperating witnesses in active cartel cases face stricter movement restrictions, even at the cost of cooperation compliance rates? The question has no clean answer, but the comments are there. The charges filed against the subject in federal court in Phoenix on June 18, 2026, failure to appear, obstruction of justice, and a reinstated conspiracy charge from the original cooperation agreement, which voided on flight. 3 separate counts. The obstruction charge carried the heaviest potential sentence, tied to the evidence that he had maintained contact with the network during his 22 months in Sedona. The 3 lab operators he had originally agreed to testify against were not immediately affected by his arrest. Their cases had proceeded separately in his absence. 2 had entered plea agreements in 2025. 1 was awaiting trial. His cooperation, had it happened, might have produced longer sentences for those individuals. It did not happen. The plea agreement stood. The $214,000 in cash recovered from the casita was seized as proceeds connected to narcotics activity. The retreat business, the entity itself, was not seized. Its lease continued. The building's owner learned of the arrest from local media. Whether the retreat continued operations under new management was a question that remained open at the time of filing. The forged Belize passport was traced, eventually, to a document production network operating across 3 cities. That investigation was ongoing and separate from the primary case. The second passport found in the casita came from a different production source, one that had not previously appeared in federal records.
The ticketed lap. The retreat had 93 positive online reviews. It was listed on major tourism platforms. It paid taxes. It carried insurance. It gave no external indication of anything unusual. The subjects of federal fugitive hunts are not always living in cash motels under assumed names with no paper trail. Sometimes the paper trail is a cover.
One detail that stuck with me from this case: the ATM at the Sedona gas station was not a machine the subject had used regularly. The surveillance records show he used a different ATM at a credit union branch 4 miles from the retreat for his routine withdrawals. The gas station machine appeared only once in his financial record across 22 months. 1 use, 1 frame, 91%. If he had used his regular ATM that Tuesday in November 2025, the facial recognition query would have had nothing to match.
The case file would have continued sitting in the quarterly audit backlog. The retreat would still be open. He would still be teaching 3 classes a day. The marshals got one frame. They used it. The 22 months in Sedona are now something federal fugitive investigators reference when discussing what they call lifestyle fugitives, individuals who do not disappear into criminal infrastructure but instead build a functional civilian identity and embed in a community that has no reason to look closely. His mistake was not the identity itself. The identity was well constructed. His mistake was a single ATM use at a machine he did not typically frequent. Captured by a camera that was part of an unrelated investigation, processed through a system he did not know existed, matched against his biometric profile at 91% confidence. The network he had maintained contact with, the communications found on the laptop, remained partially active at the time of arrest. The 7 associates identified from the burner phone were flagged for investigation. 27 numbers were not yet identified. The lab operators he did not testify against received sentences shaped by plea agreements rather than trial evidence. The reward of $180,000 was never paid. No tip led to the arrest. The case was broken by a database query and a business registry search. Subscribe if you want the cases that do not follow the expected pattern. The next one involves a financial investigator, 2 years of transaction records, and an amount of money that still has not been fully accounted for. Phone raid, silhouette footage. Shot from the tree line at 6:14 a.m. showed federal agents moving in a line toward the front entrance. The gravel path still dark, the red rock formations just beginning to catch the light. The door was still closed. The team reached it in 8 seconds. He is in federal custody. The 27 numbers are not.